There was a time when a man could walk up to a truck stop parts counter in Amarillo and buy half the things on this list right off the shelf. A chrome suicide knob for the steering wheel, a cheater pipe for the chain binders, a kerosene heater for the bunk. Nobody blinked. Today, every single one of those inventions is banned, restricted, or regulated to death, and some of them carry fines north of $10,000. But walk the truck rows at the Iowa 80 truck stop and ask the old hands, and you'll hear the other side of the story, because the veterans who ran the golden age of trucking still swear by half this list. Today, we're counting down 15 banned truck inventions that could end a career in a single roadside inspection, and why the men who use them insist they work just fine. And number one is the invention that let an outlaw buy a brand new truck with a 30-year-old heart right up until the government slammed that door forever. But before the fines and the inspection lanes, a truck was whatever a driver could build, bolt on, or rig up in a gravel lot on a Sunday afternoon. Between the 1960s and the 2000s, drivers and small shops invented an entire catalog of gadgets and fixes just to keep freight moving and bills paid. Some of it was brilliant, some of it was dangerous. All of it got outlawed, one piece at a time. Here's every one of them, what it did back then and what it costs now. Number 15, the suicide knob. That chrome spinner clamped to the steering wheel let a driver whip a Peterbilt around a tight dock with one hand while the other worked the CB or hung out the window watching the trailer tandems. Every truck stop counter from Barstow to Baltimore sold them. The name tells you the problem. Hit a pothole or let the front tire catch a curb, and that wheel snaps back hard enough to break a wrist or worse. The feds never banned it outright, but nearly every fleet safety department in America did. Several states restrict them on commercial vehicles, and a sharp inspector who sees one on a big truck starts looking a whole lot closer at everything else in the cab. Plenty of retired drivers will tell you they backed into 10,000 docks with one and never got a scratch. The insurance companies kept different books. Either way, the knob that once sat proud on every wheel now mostly lives on show trucks that never haul a load. Number 14, recaps on the steer axle. Tires were expensive in 1978 and they're worse now, so drivers ran recapped rubber on every position, including the two tires up front that do all the steering. A good cap cost half the price of a virgin tire, and an owner-operator watching every dime could shoe a whole rig for the price of 4 new steers. Then Federal Rule 393.75 came down and banned regrooved rubber off the steer axle, and the fleets and insurance companies finished the job on recaps, writing policies that made a capped steer tire a firing offense. The reason is written on the shoulder of every interstate in the country. Those long black gators lying on the asphalt are thrown caps, and when one lets go on a drive axle, you lose a mud flap. When one lets go on the steer at 70 miles an hour, you can lose the whole truck. Get caught running caps up front today, and it's a violation on the driver, a hit on the carrier's safety score, and if the tread's separating, an out-of-service order right there on the shoulder. The old tire men have an answer for the gators, by the way. A good cap fails no more often than the casing it rides on, and most of that rubber on the shoulder came off cheap casings run hot and underinflated. Maybe so. The rule book stopped listening in the 80s. Number 13, the Arkansas cruise control. Before factory cruise, drivers got tired of holding a throttle pedal for 11 hours across Kansas, so they invented their own. A broomstick cut to length and wedged between the seat frame and the pedal. A hand throttle knob pulled out and locked. Some shops even sold little screw clamps built for the job. Set your speed outside Salina, put your boot up on the doghouse, and ride. The problem showed up the first time a car cut across the nose of a loaded rig, and the driver had to kick that stick loose before he could slow down. Locking a throttle on a vehicle that weighs 80,000 pounds is exactly as smart as it sounds, and today it draws an unsafe operation citation, a reckless driving charge if something goes wrong, and a lawyer's dream in any crash investigation. Truck makers quietly deleted the hand throttle from the dash years ago for this exact reason. The broomstick men never apologized for any of it. 11 hours of throttle leg across Kansas is its own argument. Their brake lights just came on a half second too late. Number 12, the speedometer magnet. Paper logbooks were only half the fiction. The other half was the odometer, because a clever inspector could compare miles against hours and catch a driver running long. So drivers got creative with the speedometer cable. Unscrew it behind the dash, let it hang, and the odometer sleeps while the truck rolls 500 miles through the night. Others rigged magnets or swapped gears so the miles counted slow. A driver could run Chicago to Laredo and have the dashboard swear he napped in Joplin the whole time. Falsifying a record of duty status was already one of the most heavily fined violations in the industry. Running into the thousands per offense and tampering with the odometer is a federal crime on its own, with penalties that can reach $10,000 per violation. And the modern engine computer made the whole trick extinct because the ECM logs every mile, every minute, whether the dashboard is plugged in or not. The cable trick died the day the truck started keeping its own diary. Number 11, the pigtail jumper. When trailer anti-lock brakes became mandatory, so did that little warning lamp on the trailer nose. And when a rented or beat-up trailer had an ABS fault 2 hours before a delivery appointment, some drivers found a faster fix than a shop. A short jumper wire in the 7-way pigtail or a dab of black tape over the lamp, and the problem disappeared. Except it didn't. The brakes were still faulty, the trailer was still rolling, and the paper trail was still waiting. Today, a defeated or bypassed brake warning system is a straight brake violation. One of the categories inspectors weigh heaviest, and a bad enough fault puts the trailer out of service on the spot while the load sits. Worse, if that trailer's involved in a wreck, the jumper wire turns an accident into evidence of intent, and that's when fines turn into courtrooms. And yes, the men who drove before ABS hauled 40 years without a computer ever touching their brakes. Nobody's arguing the point. But wiring around a warning light never fixed a break in the history of trucking. Number 10. Blocked airbags. When an airbag in the suspension blew out on a Friday night 80 miles from the house, the golden era answer came from the lumber pile. Jack the frame, cut a block of oak to length, set it where the bag used to ride, and limp her home riding on wood. Every old shop had a story about a truck that came in with 2x6 cribbing where the suspension used to be, and some of those trucks had been riding that way for a month. The federal out-of-service criteria put an end to it. A blocked or missing suspension component today is a violation that can park the truck immediately, because a frame riding solid on lumber has no give, hammers the fifth wheel, and can shift a load or crack a frame rail on the first bad railroad crossing. The fine stings, the tow bill stings worse, and the freight claim on a shifted load stings most of all. The old hands called it getting home. The inspection manual calls it an imminent hazard. Somewhere between those two phrases is 50 years of trucking history. Number 9. The locomotive horn. A factory air horn on a Kenworth W900 is loud. A real train horn pulled off a scrapped locomotive is a natural disaster with a chrome finish. In the 70s and 80s, drivers hunted railroad salvage yards for genuine 5-chime locomotive horns, plumbed them into the truck's air system, and announced themselves to entire counties at once. We're talking 150 decibels, a sound with physical weight, and on a foggy 2-lane it arguably saved lives. Everywhere else it rattled windows at 3 in the morning. States and cities came down hard with horn and noise ordinances that treat an unreasonably loud or improperly used horn as a citable offense, fines that stack with each stop, and in some jurisdictions, orders to remove the equipment entirely. Blast one near a real rail crossing and you can add confusing traffic around a railroad to the charge sheet. Mention the train horn at any truck show though, and watch the grins spread, because nothing before or since ever moved a four-wheeler out of the hammer lane faster. And hang on to that soft spot for old iron, because that exact instinct is what built number 1 on this list into an empire. Number 8. The cheater bar. Flatbed men know this one in their sleep. The old lever-style chain binders took real force to snap over center, so every flatbedder carried a length of pipe, the snipe, to slip over the handle for leverage. 3 feet of pipe turned a 200-pound pull into something a tired man could do at 5 in the morning in the rain. The trouble was stored energy. A lever binder under load with a cheater on it is a loaded spring, and when one kicked back, it broke jaws, knocked out teeth, and threw grown men off trailer decks. Binder manufacturers prohibit cheater bars flat out. Safety regulations treat an improperly secured load as a violation that can run hundreds of dollars per tie-down. And workers' comp files from the lever binder era read like a boxing record. The industry moved to ratchet binders, which need no pipe and hold tighter. Plenty of old flatbedders still keep a lever binder and a snipe in the side box anyway, on the theory that a ratchet is for men who've never been in a hurry. Their dentists disagree. Number 7. Open flame in the bunk. Before auxiliary power units, before diesel-fired bunk heaters, a driver shut down in Cheyenne in January had two choices: idle all night and burn a gallon an hour, or improvise. So the sleeper berths of America filled up with kerosene wick heaters, propane catalytic heaters, and single-burner camp stoves glowing away 18 inches from a foam mattress. Every winter brought truck stop fires, and every old driver knows a story about a cab burned to the frame rails in a parking lot outside Effingham. Fire codes, hazmat rules, and company policies have banned open flame heaters in sleepers across the industry, and now the anti-idling laws squeeze the other side too, with more than half the states restricting idling and fines that can reach 5 figures for repeat offenders. So the modern driver sits in the same cold bunk his grandfather did, just with more paperwork attached to every way of getting warm. The men who survived the kerosene era all swear by one rule: never fall asleep without cracking a window. The ones who skip that rule aren't around to argue, and that cold bunk problem never actually went away, which is why a lot of drivers I've talked with now keep a thermal bivvy stashed in the side box instead of a heater. The one that keeps coming up is called TerraShell. It's a compact emergency sleeping bag with an aluminized lining that reflects your own body heat back at you, so the bunk stays livable with the engine off in freezing weather. No flame, no fuel, no batteries, nothing to catch or burn. It packs down smaller than a soda can and costs less than one idling ticket, which is probably why so many drivers and their wives are putting one in the truck. If you want to look at it, the link is in the description below. Now, staying warm was one battle. Keeping the load on the trailer was another, and the next invention on this list held America's freight down for 50 years. Number 6. Rope and tarp. Before ratchet straps with stitched labels and working load limits, freight rode under canvas tarps tied down with manila rope, and the whole system held together with one piece of genius: the trucker's hitch. That knot gave a man a 3-to-1 purchase, cinched a tarp drum tight, and could be thrown in the dark with frozen fingers. A driver's knots were his signature. Then the federal cargo securement rules arrived and changed the language entirely. Tie-downs now have to be rated, marked, and matched to the weight of the cargo, with enough aggregate working load limit to hold the load. An unmarked rope simply doesn't qualify on most freight. Run a load held down with rope today, and each insufficient tie-down is its own violation. The fines stack per count, and the load can be parked until it's resecured. The trucker's hitch itself was never outlawed, and it still earns its keep on tarps and small stuff. But as the legal muscle holding 10 tons of steel to a deck, number 5. The dump valve trick. Air ride suspension came with a gift the engineers never intended. That little dump valve in the cab, meant for dropping the trailer or smoothing a dock approach, could empty the bags in seconds. And somewhere along the line, drivers sitting on a scale platform a few hundred pounds heavy on one axle figured out that dumping the air at the right moment shifted weight between axle groups and could rock a reading just enough to squeak past. Some got surgical with it, feathering the valve while the scale house watched the numbers dance. Manipulating a weigh-in is treated as evading or defeating the weight enforcement process, which stacks a fresh violation on top of the overweight fine the driver was hiding, and overweight tickets in states like New York and Pennsylvania already scale by the pound into 5 figures. Modern scale houses use multiple sensors, cameras watching the suspension, and inspectors who've seen every version of the dance. The valve is still on the dash. The trick is on this list. Number 4. The police scanner. The CB told you where the bears were only if another driver had already seen them. A scanner told you where they were going. In the 80s, a Bearcat scanner mounted next to the CB was the serious outlaw's instrument, pulling in county sheriff dispatch and highway patrol traffic while the driver adjusted his speed and his route accordingly. Drivers called it the bear tracker, and paired with a radar detector, it made a man nearly untouchable on a night run. The catch is that several states ban mobile scanners outright. New York's law against police radio receivers in a vehicle goes back generations. Indiana restricts them, and using one during any other offense escalates everything. For a commercial driver, the scanner stacks on top of the 1994 federal ban on radar detectors in commercial trucks, where even a dead unit in the glove box draws a violation and dings the carrier's score. And here's the quiet ending to the story. Encrypted digital police radio killed the bear tracker deader than any law ever did. There's nothing left to listen to. Number 3. The widowmakers. Split rim wheels. Multi-piece rims held tires on trucks for decades with a locking side ring under pressure, and every old tire man knows exactly why they earned that name. Service one wrong, seat that ring badly, and the assembly lets go with the force of a bomb, launching steel across the shop. These wheels killed and maimed tire workers for years, enough that OSHA wrote an entire regulation around servicing them, requiring safety cages and clip-on chucks, and the industry stampeded to one-piece, tubeless wheels as fast as it could. Today, most tire shops flat out refuse to touch a split rim. Employers who let workers service them wrong face federal citations that can run into 5 figures, and a truck rolling on cracked or mismatched multi-piece rims can be written up and parked at inspection. And yet, walk any tractor show or talk to any man who ran the 50s and 60s, and you'll hear respect in his voice for the old Firestone rims that carried the freight before radials were a rumor. Respect, and a story about somebody who wasn't standing where he should have been. Every old tire man has one. That's why they're called widowmakers. Number 2, the smoke switch. When emissions computers started strangling diesels, a cottage industry answered with a little toggle on the dash. Flip it, and a small electronic box lied to the engine's sensors, dumping extra fuel, killing the exhaust controls, and letting the truck roll coal like it was 1979. Drivers swore the switch woke the engine up, cooled the exhaust temps on a hard pull, and got them over Cabbage Hill with power the factory never allowed. The EPA calls that little box a defeat device, and the Clean Air Act treats it accordingly. Individual tampering penalties run into the thousands per violation. Shops and sellers of defeat hardware have been hammered with settlements running into the millions, and California can pull a tampered truck off the road entirely until every piece of equipment goes back on. Meanwhile, that same engine computer we keep coming back to logs the tampering evidence permanently. But to the men who ran them, the switch was never about the smoke. It was about a truck that pulled like trucks used to pull. Which brings us to number 1, because one invention promised exactly that, legally, and built the outlaw's last great truck. Number 1, the glider kit. Here's how it worked. A manufacturer sold you a brand new truck with no engine and no transmission, a glider, and a shop dropped in a rebuilt pre-emissions motor, usually a mechanical Detroit Series 60 or an old Caterpillar, engines with no particulate filter, no EGR, no regen cycles, and a million-mile reputation. The result was a brand new Peterbilt or Freightliner with a 30-year-old heart. Cheaper to buy, cheaper to run, and easier to fix with hand tools in a gravel lot. Outfits like Fitzgerald glider kits in Byrdstown, Tennessee turned it into an empire, rolling thousands of them a year out to owner-operators who called it the last real truck you could buy. The EPA saw a loophole pumping old emissions onto new highways, and in 2018, the hammer came down, capping glider production to a few hundred units per builder and effectively ending the boom overnight. California won't register them, other states followed with restrictions, and running a non-compliant glider where it's barred invites fines that can bury an owner-operator. The veterans still call it the truck the government took away. The regulators call it settled. Both of them are right. Look at that list as a whole, and the pattern is impossible to miss. Every invention on it was born in the gap between what the job demanded and what the equipment, the paycheck, or the weather allowed. Drivers didn't rig broomstick throttles and lumbar suspensions because they were reckless. They did it because the freight had to move and nobody else was coming to help. The regulations won, and the honest truth is the highways are safer for most of it. But the men who built these things with a torch, a hacksaw, and a Saturday afternoon kept this country fed and clothed for 50 years, and that deserves remembering. If you drove in that era, tell us in the comments which of these inventions you ran with your own hands and which ones we missed, because there are at least 15 more where these came from. And if these stories take you back, hit subscribe, because next time we're covering the discontinued trucks veteran drivers still say were the best ever built, and why not one of them could be sold new today. Keep the shiny side up.